So, have you ever tried to, map out an entire belief system? It sounds kind of impossible, right? Well, today we're diving into one theologian's incredibly ambitious attempt to do just that for Christianity. We're talking about the book, The Faith Once for All. And that question right there is really the whole ball game. Because the Bible isn't just one book, is it? It's a library. You've got history, poetry, letters, all written across centuries by different people. So how in the world do you take all of that and turn it into a single, coherent, reliable map for faith? It's a huge task, and the book we're exploring today is one of the most detailed maps ever drawn. So let's stick with this idea of a map for faith. The reviewer describes Jack Cottrell's massive book as exactly that, a super comprehensive guide that tries to chart out every single major piece of theological territory. Okay, so who's the guy who drew this map? Dr. Jack Cottrell. And he's a big deal. We're talking about a Princeton-trained theologian who became pretty much the leading voice for a major American Christian tradition. You can think of him as the chief architect for their entire belief system. Now, of course, every map maker has to follow some rules. You can't just start drawing lines wherever you want. And to really get Cottrell's final map, we have to first understand his blueprint, the core principles he used to build the whole thing. See, Cottrell comes out of something called the Restoration Movement. This thing was born back in 19th century America, and it had this really radical goal, to just strip away centuries of all the man-made stuff, creeds, confessions, denominations, and get back to what they saw as a pure form of Christianity, based only on the New Testament. And their whole philosophy was basically boiled down into this one powerful slogan: no creed but Christ, no book but the Bible. Now, this isn't just a catchy phrase. For Cottrell, this is the number one non-negotiable rule. It means the Bible and the Bible alone is the blueprint. This is the absolute bedrock of his entire project. Okay, so you've got the background, you know the rules he's playing by. Now let's get to the really interesting stuff, the heart of the book. According to the review, there are three huge distinctive ideas in Cottrell's system that really stand out. All right, first up is this incredibly powerful way he separates law and grace. He says, look, these aren't just different sets of rules. They are two completely different operating systems for how you relate to God. The law system, that makes sense to us. It's cause and effect. Do good, get good. But the grace system, it completely flips that on its head. It says you can follow the rules perfectly and still face the penalty, or you can break them all and somehow escape it. It's a total mind-bending paradigm shift. And you can see why this idea hits so hard. The reviewer calls it arrestingly clear and pedagogically unforgettable. In other words, it's not just a smart theological point, it's a brilliant teaching tool. It just grabs you and shows you the shocking, almost illogical nature of grace in a way you just can't forget. Okay, big idea number two. And this is where things, get a little spicy, especially for a lot of modern evangelicals. Cottrell argues pretty forcefully that baptism isn't just a nice symbol. No, he says it is the specific, God-appointed moment that a person actually receives salvation. That means forgiveness, the Holy Spirit, the whole shebang. And to make this case, he doesn't just point to a few verses. He makes this bold historical argument. He basically says, hey, look at the timeline. For 1,500 years, from the very first church fathers all the way up through Martin Luther, the consensus was clear. Baptism is for salvation. He argues that this common idea we have today of it being only a symbol, well, that was actually a radical new invention by the reformer Zwingli way back in the 16th century. And his third big idea is a fascinating alternative to the famous doctrine of original sin. Cottrell calls his idea original grace. He completely rejects the notion that babies are born carrying Adam's guilt. Instead, he argues that Christ's death on the cross already wiped that slate clean for every single person. So what does that mean? It means every child is born in a state of grace, and they only become accountable for sin when they're old enough to actually choose it. So there you have it. Cottrell has drawn his map, but a map is only really useful when you compare it to other maps of the same territory, right? And the review really focuses on one major comparison, how Cottrell's system stacks up against the Reformed or Calvinist tradition. And boy, this is where the maps really clash. The whole disagreement basically boils down to one question: who is in the driver's seat when it comes to salvation? Cottrell, coming from what's called the Arminian tradition, says that human free will is a huge part of the equation. God chooses us because he looks into the future and sees that we will choose him. But in the Calvinist view, no. It's all God's choice, based on his will alone, and it has nothing to do with us. And that one difference changes literally everything else.
from whether we can resist God's grace to whether Jesus died for the whole world or only for the chosen few.
All right, so after laying out this incredibly detailed map and seeing how it clashes with others, what's the final verdict from the reviewer? Well, it's pretty balanced. There are some major strengths, but also some pretty significant weaknesses.
On the plus side, the reviewer points out some huge wins. That whole law versus grace framework, it's a total game changer. The historical deep dive on baptism, absolutely eye-opening, even if you wind up disagreeing with him. And his super detailed verse-by-verse argument against Calvinist predestination is praised as one of the most thorough and rigorous cases you'll find anywhere.
But it's not perfect.
The reviewer also notes some big weaknesses. The book has some serious scholarly blind spots. It barely even mentions Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox theology. It also doesn't really get into a lot of the modern debates on big topics like the atonement. And maybe most importantly, it kind of tends to state its own case without really grappling with the absolute strongest arguments from the other side. So here's the bottom line. Who should actually sit down and read this thing? It's over 600 pages. Well, the reviewer says it's absolutely essential for its main audience, pastors and students in his own restoration movement. But beyond that, it's highly recommended for any non-Calvinist out there who's looking for a really serious, comprehensive, and well-argued alternative to the big theological systems that tend to dominate the conversation.
In the end, what Cottrell created is a truly impressive and incredibly rigorous map of the Christian faith, drawn from a really unique and powerful perspective. But it does leave us all with a much bigger question, doesn't it? Can any single map, no matter how detailed or carefully drawn by human hands, ever truly capture the infinite, mysterious terrain of God?